Hey there, everybody. Welcome. I'm Dr. Greg Eckel of Nature Cures Clinic in downtown Portland, Oregon, and I am putting out my best effort this evening to you. It's questions about the vaccines, immune system function, and a healthy dose of curiosity. Wow. This is a never-ending research project for all involved, and the study is currently on. So I want to just start out with saying, if I can advance my slides, got a bunch of questions from patients and those on my email readers, etc. So I'm going to answer all of those as we go through the presentation and also at the very end with steps to take going forward. I want to give a little introduction in case you're not so familiar with me. So I've spent the last 20 years developing and refining my unique approach to chronic neurological conditions. In addition to my experience in clinical practice using combination of naturopathic and Chinese medicine, I have a deep personal knowledge of chronic neurodegeneration and in particular Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. So I lost my then wife, Soraya, 3 years ago to that disease. And currently it has no known cure. So I have a specialty in neurodegeneration, brain health, and longevity. I swung for the fence and I put together a brain regeneration program. I'm out every day researching and looking for solutions. And so one of the components that I have seen that we will talk about today are some possibilities of negative consequences of for folks with neurodegeneration. So I had a lot of questions around that. So stick around, we'll be answering those. I'm a lecturer, international lecturer. I'm an author. I wrote the book, Shake It Off, an integrative approach to Parkinson's solutions. I'm an inventor. I developed a nasal spray with a patent pending to help called Clear Mind nasal spray, and I'm an expert in integrative care for neurodegeneration. I'm the co-founder of Nature Cures Clinic, also the owner of that clinic. I was the past board president appointed by the governor of Oregon to chair for the the Oregon Board of Naturopathic Medical Examiners, responsible for protecting the public in the state of Oregon. I've been featured on ABC and NBC and CBS and Fox television stations, and I'm a monthly contributor to KATU TV in Portland, Oregon, where I'm their monthly naturopathic doctor doing health education. The root word of doctor is docere and teacher, and I'm really here. I think this is such a controversial topic. It's loaded, and so many doctors and physicians aren't speaking out about it, just kind of towing the party line. And I really owe it to you all, my family members, and community to speak up and just educate around informed consent in particular. But we're going to talk about, each of the vaccines, what we're seeing, what's in them. That was a big question for folks. Are they safe? So we're going to talk about all of that today. Really in this vein of curiosity. So I wanted to start this out because it is such a loaded topic. I mean, if you have any questions about vaccines, you get thrown into the anti-vaxxer campaign. And it's like, that is not my intent. I'm coming at it from a very curious component. I think it's interesting. We have so much censorship happening today in that a lot of my colleagues and friends, and I actually get to talk to researchers all day for my podcast called What the Health, they're afraid to speak up or speak out or even question what is happening for fear of grant money or their livelihoods and the safety of their family. And so I'm really asking for, this to be in the vein of curiosity, to have a disposition of wonder and humility that earnestly believes that every situation and person has something to teach us. And boy, there's a lot of teaching happening these days, right? So fostering curiosity, some groups that I've been getting involved with just in our, in the United States here, the Braver Angels is a really cool group, bringing the right and the left together and into discourse and discussion and modeling that behavior. Senior advisor Monica Guzman offers some great tips and ways to foster curiosity, avoid certainty, the villain of curiosity. Anybody that is certain around these issues, we just don't have the data. So to have certainty, that's not humility. And that is actually, in my frame of reference, very dangerous and renegade. Be comfortable with complexity. Boy, if I have learned anything in life, it can get complex. And boy, when you get into the research and all of the differing opinions around what is going on in the world right now, we definitely have complexity. Reject easy answers, because if it's an either or, you know it cannot be true. I'm standing for the and here, and it's an interesting place to be because you don't have a lot of friends on either side of the discussion. But really, we are looking for truth. That should be our main goal. And foster a baseline of knowledge that allows you to keep learning about the world and others. So, with my medical background, I feel like I'm well positioned here. I have given vaccines in my career that actually did create harm in the children that we vaccinated. So I personally, I choose not to. There's plenty of places to get vaccines, but the first tenet of medicine is do no harm. And I really want to live up to that. So I have not, in my conscious, I wasn't able to continue with that. I don't treat a lot of children at this point in my career either. But I want to say, it is with humility that I present this information to you. The Braver Angels also, oh, my clicking is too quick. April Lawson reminded us of an important truth. You can never really know something until you love it. So to be curious about others means first learning to love them. In order to restore unity in our broken time, in order to become curious about others, we must recover a basic affection for our co-citizens and fellow members of the human community. I am hearing, in particular around vaccines, I'm hearing people label others as stupid. And it just goes both directions with people pointing the fingers across the board. I am here to stand for love and unity. And that is out of love, do I share my findings with you. The civic renaissance. So we can lead a curious life by getting our daily dose of wonder, taking a walk or marveling at nature, looking up at the sky at night and realizing the vastness of space and the smallness of humanity. And that's Alexandra Hudson, founder and curator of Civic Renaissance. She really runs a really cool newsletter if you're looking to engage in that process. But I wanted to start this lecture out with some curiosity and humbleness again, and lots of love. So basic concepts of the immune system, what I'm finding in my patient base, even my own family, there's not a great understanding of what we're talking about with the immune system. I remember back to when there was the flu shot shortage, and I wrote an editorial for the Oregonian, our state newspaper here in Oregon. And it was around our innate immune system. We actually come into the world with an immune system. I have helped folks with full-blown HIV/AIDS with no T cell counts survive pneumonia because of stimulating their innate immune system. So the two branches of it are the innate and the acquired immune system. There's the Th1, the cell-mediated, and Th2 humoral processes. And I want to give some references along the way. This is not meant to be comprehensive. This is maybe a primer, but also I'm looking to stimulate some curiosity for you. Innate immunity. So immunity possessed by a group as a species or a race that is present in an individual at birth prior to exposure to a pathogen or antigen. And that includes components as intact skin. That's a part of our innate immunity. Salivary enzymes start to break down particles in our mouth, neutrophils, which fight bacteria in our system, natural killer cells, and complement, which provide an initial response against infections. That comes out of the definition from Merriam-Webster. I did include some dictionary definitions here because it's interesting. In the time of COVID, the amount of censorship that is occurring, the algorithms are changing people away from sources, trusted sources, but natural sources. And actually definitions are getting changed as well. So I wanted to have some static things that are firm there. Acquired immunity, immunity that develops after exposure to a suitable agent. So by an attack of a disease or by an injection of antigens. Again, that comes from Merriam-Webster, acquired immunity. And so these two together here, well, the Th1 to Th2. Now this diagram, I get this from healing.org, so thank you all out there at the website. I like this one. This shows a Th1 to Th2 immune shift. So Th1 here, cell-mediated immunity. It fights inside the cells. It's suppressed and vulnerable to viruses, Epstein-Barr, parvo, flu, bacteria, mycoplasma, Lyme, yeast and candida, and fungal infections. That's Th1. Now this will be important as we start talking about what these immunizations do and how they interact with our immune system. So that's why I'm presenting these at the beginning. Th2 is humoral immunity. So this fights outside the cells, overactive and vulnerable to increased antibody production, allergies to environment and foods, asthma, and autoimmune conditions. So a lot of people had questions about autoimmunity. Maybe it's getting triggered with these vaccines. We will talk about that, but that is a Th1 to Th2 immune shift. And these are some terms around your immune system. Vaccines defined. So I feel like there's some questions as to, are these vaccines? Some people are calling them gene therapy. I do think that these do hit the vaccine definition. Now, they're new vaccines, so they're not vaccines we've ever seen before. But when you get vaccine in the word, you're expecting any preparation used as a preventative inoculation to confer immunity against a specific disease, usually employing an innocuous form of the disease agent, so as killed or weakened bacteria or viruses. And then I bolded to stimulate antibody production, because there is some question as to how much and how long do antibodies form after getting the messenger RNA vaccines. Now, I am going to call them vaccines. A lot of folks in alternative medicine land are calling them gene therapy because they are a new technology and act more like a gene therapy. But I also want to differentiate here. When you hear vaccine, that's typically what we had in childhood, right? If you're older, such as myself, you had fewer vaccines than children today. I believe the number that I received were 26. The current count is up to 72. Don't quote me on that exact number, but it is a lot, 72 to 76 injections. And so it's a different ballgame, and these aren't the same type of mechanism of action. So they are really cool mechanisms of action. So we're going to talk about that because it is a very fascinating and really up and coming technology. But I want to just put a little emphasis on this. It's not, when we say vaccine, you think that you have immunity, and these, none of the vaccines on the market currently are giving you any immunity. So there's some semantics happening, and I want to really make sure we're clear on what it actually is we're expecting from mass vaccination here. And then I do want to focus in on informed consent, because this is currently not happening, and this is a major medical ethics debacle. And I actually just got off of a Zoom call with my family where 3 members, already have the vaccine, and they did not receive proper informed consent. So what does that mean? It means it's assent to permit an occurrence such as surgery or a vaccination that is based on a complete disclosure of facts. And I bolded that, a complete disclosure of facts needed to make the decision intelligently, such as knowledge of the risks entailed or alternatives. Now, currently, we don't have an alternative to that vaccine. I mean, there are a lot of alternatives to increase your innate immunity, to make your terrain less hospitable, but none of that is discussed. And in fact, I would say public health has failed us. They've had a year of propaganda to not even educate people about basic facts about how their immune systems function and really how to reduce the risk. I have a slide at the end of the presentation on how to reduce your risk by 63.5%. You think you would have heard about that by now, but unfortunately you haven't. And in fact, there's been outright active censorship on physicians such as myself and my colleagues on getting this message out to you. So we'll see, how long this one will stay out there. But I'm taking the curiosity route and an encompassing discussion here. So informed consent. Well, what do we mean by that? So here, conclusions drawn. So this is in particular informed consent for the vaccines related to COVID. Conclusions drawn from the study and clinical implications. The specific and significant COVID-19 risk of ADE should have been and should be prominently and independently disclosed to research subjects currently in vaccine trials. This was back in October 2020, as well as those being recruited for the trials and future patients after vaccine approval, in order to meet the medical ethics standard of patient comprehension for informed consent. This is currently not happening nowhere on the globe. This is big deal, and you're going to see some possibilities that you really should be informed about if you're considering getting the vaccine. And again, this is about informed consent. I'm all for people choosing the vaccine as long as they know exactly what they're signing up for. And that is currently not happening around the globe. So this is research. You can take a screenshot of that. There's the study that I'm referring to on. So this is like significant medical ethics violations occurring worldwide. And that's why you'll see some people say this is close to the Nuremberg principles of, Nazi Germany, of not understanding what is happening. So just on par with the medical ethics dilemmas here. So you'll see people talking about it. I'm not claiming that. I'm just saying that there are some out there talking about it. And so now maybe you have an understanding as to where they're bringing those Nuremberg principles up, is really around informed consent. So what is ADE? And I have not heard of one person that have received these inoculations. They've never heard this term before. Antibody-dependent exacerbations. So this activity is known as antibody-dependent enhancement or exacerbations of virus infection. So the ADE of virus infection is a phenomenon in which virus-specific antibodies enhance the entry of a virus. There's a 2003 article there on the antibody-dependent enhancement, and then the concept of antibody-dependent exacerbations is here. So the messenger RNA technology is not new. It's new being put into people, but there have been multiple animal studies in the past. So over a span of 18 years, there have been numerous coronavirus vaccine animal studies conducted, which unfortunately demonstrated significant and serious side effects. Either the animals were not completely protected, became severely ill with accelerated autoimmune conditions, or died. So that there are 7 research articles at this link that you can search for that statement right there. But this is of serious and significant concern that people don't understand this. I am alarmed as a physician. I'm not exactly sure what our regulatory bodies are doing with regards to educating the population. I think, it might be that component of they don't want to discuss this because people may not get the vaccine, but people are not able to make an informed decision without this information. So this is one thing that I would ask you to share with your loved ones and community members. Informed consent. So again, another aspect in addition to the ADEs are an article published called COVID RNA-based vaccines and the risk of prion disease. So the results indicate that the vaccine RNA has specific sequences that may induce TDP43 and FUS to fold into their pathogenic prion conformations. And so there is the link to that study. Now, I even went so far as to read the debunking of this study, which was full of ad hominems, personal attacks, and they never answered the question. The answer to this is we just don't know. Now, prions, obviously, they are near and dear to me. I lost my wife, Soraya, to a prionic activity. So I've been researching prions for 3 years. And as a result of seeing this information, I just don't have enough information on the vaccines to recommend my patients with neurodegeneration. They're asking me, should we get this vaccine? And in light of this, it may make their conditions worse. And so it is, again, of serious and grave concern. The debunking, or the myth buster was debunking, saying, oh, this is just old. What is old is new again. And this is old anti-vaxxer propaganda. I am here to tell you, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I am researching this condition for your health and for my health. I'm a clinician, and the first tenet of medicine is do no harm. To see this and to have it just brushed aside, I believe is criminal. And it is something to have some significant concern. I'm not saying that this will occur, but the truth of the matter is we have no idea. And that in and of itself should be telling. Our current understanding of what we're getting with these vaccines: one, the vaccine cannot prevent the spread of the virus. Two, it doesn't even confer immunity. It shortens the duration of the infection and shortens the disease. And again, not for everybody, but that's the hope. That's what we're seeing with the early returns and results. But that's our current understanding. Like, that's what we know. The current results are coming in. So they have not been shown, the vaccines have not been shown to provide antibody immunity to SARS-CoV-2 virus. They have not been shown to protect against getting this particular virus. They have not been shown to reduce the circulation in the population, and they have not been shown to reduce transmission from one person to the next. So you may be asking, what have they been shown to do? And which is exactly what I gave you here. It can't prevent the spread of the virus, and it may shorten the duration of the infection or shorten the disease, the severity of disease. So not like our typical discussion of vaccines. It is definitely it's something to employ. I'm just looking for people to have informed consent about what they're choosing to do with their bodies. The Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS data. So as of February 12th, there have been 929 deaths registered on our reporting system in the United States. There have been 616 life-threatening adverse events, 316 cases of permanent disability, and more than 5,000 hospitalizations and emergency room visits after COVID vaccinations were reported to the VAERS system, which is updated weekly. Now, one word about the reporting system is research has shown significant underreporting, which basically shows fewer than 1% of vaccine adverse events are ever reported. So people don't know about this system. There's the link to it, so you can see if you get the vaccine, you're welcome to use it. If there are physicians, providers watching this, please know about it. I think many in the alternative and complementary health system are very aware of the VAERS data. Um, one could say, well, that doesn't seem like a lot of deaths, Dr. Eckel, 929. Well, say that to the families that lost their healthy loved one that was doing, quote unquote, the right thing. So there are ways to, I think, mitigate, prevent, and have even fewer responses like that. But to say that this is a safe vaccine, I kind of took some screenshots of some colleagues of mine websites and or sharing on the Facebook where the fact checkers come and say the WHO World Health Organization has said this is a safe and effective vaccine. Well, we don't know if it's that effective. In the early data, we're not sure. The companies are not releasing their early research data. Pfizer and Moderna in particular, they say that within 24 months of the study ending, which is in 2022, the study ending. So, people are signing up for a study here in this era without knowing it, but they are in the study. Also, in Oregon, we had 4 people test positive in Oregon that had been fully inoculated. So I, as much as the next person, want to get back out and open things back up. But we're seeing 4 fully vaccinated adults got sick with the virus, and it was 14 days after receiving both doses. So they were at, full efficacious rate. So clinical trials of both vaccines presently in use included breakthrough cases. So in those cases, even though the participants got COVID, the vaccines reduced the severity of illness. So that's what the agencies are saying in a tweet. Here's the article from Oregon Live, the newspaper here in Oregon. So I just want, again, the understanding, because I've heard people say, well, they're 95% effective. That means, I've got a 5 in 100 chance of getting COVID. That is not what that means. And I'm going to talk about efficiency, efficaciousness, and effectiveness. So there's some plays on words and some misunderstandings of what we're talking about when we say 95% effective. And that you can see right here, 4 early results, 4 people fully vaccinated got COVID. So here it is, efficacy. The Pfizer vaccine, 95% efficacious. Moderna, 95. The Johnson & Johnson vectored approach is 76%. And then Novavax is a subunit coming out. It's not open or for use in the United States as of yet, 89.3%. Efficacious. So efficacy, what are we talking about? So what is efficacy? So it's a comparison between the attack rate in people who have been vaccinated versus people who have not been vaccinated. So there are people who actually, these are people who actually reported. So there may have been asymptomatic people in the early 44,000 test case subjects that we're basing these statistics off of that never reported because they had no symptoms of disease. So effectiveness is different than efficacy. So does it really prevent people from dying? Well, we sure hope so. But again, we don't have that information. There's a lot of projections. But as we saw over this last year, the models and math predictions they're way off on all kinds of fronts. So, I'm a clinician. I want to see what's happening in the real world. So let's take a look at that. So effective rate, what does it mean? What do the companies mean when they say their vaccines are 95% effective? So in the case of Pfizer, the company recruited 43,661 volunteers and waited for 170 people to come down with symptoms of COVID-19 and then get a positive test. So out of the 170 people, 162 had received the placebo, and just 8 received the real vaccine. So that's where they're showing, when you do an equation on those numbers, you're showing, oh, well, it was 95% more effective. So a 95% efficacy is certainly compelling evidence that a vaccine works well. But that number doesn't tell you what your chances are of becoming sick if you get vaccinated. And it on its own, it also doesn't say how well the vaccine will bring down COVID-19 cases across the United States. So efficacy is not the same thing as effective. And I've heard it over and over again. Well, of course I'm going to get it. It's 95% effective. That's an anomaly of a study. So they're really looking at it in the study. This is not my component. This is in the New York Times. So efficacy is just a measurement made during a clinical trial. Effectiveness is how well the vaccine works out in the real world. So that's coming from epidemiologist at Johns Hopkins, and the article right there in the Times for you if you'd like the source. mRNA technology, it is really cool and it is really cutting edge. I mean, it is fascinating stuff and it may be the future of medicine. It is too soon to tell. Now, we've rushed these things under emergency use allowance, but when you look at the documentation here, there are significant concerns buried in the paperwork for the FDA. I had the pleasure of reading it, and it kind of puts you right to sleep. But it is in there, and they actually talk about serious, significant concerns around this. Now, you don't hear that coming across the news, but that is in the paperwork, and I think we need to be aware of that. That it is not just an innocuous, safe, totally safe vaccine. The Pfizer mRNA vaccine. So what is it? It's wrapped in liposomal nanoparticles. It's made in the lab. It's amplified in the lab to surround this spike protein programming, the messenger RNA, in liposomes. So some of which of these things, these lipid nanoparticles you've heard of, and some of them you haven't, like a proprietary blend. The macrophages in our system then take up the liposome after it's been injected, and 98% of the injected messenger RNA carrier goes into our macrocytes. And troubling, it goes into our dendritic cells as well. The lipids are acting as the adjuvant. So the kind of the fatigue and the muscle ache and the headaches, these are expected side effects of the vaccine. And, I've even had colleagues go so far to say, well, these side effects aren't so bad, so it's a totally safe vaccine to get. I think they're remiss to not consider the long-term repercussions of what we're injecting into people and actually what the spike protein is doing, in particular the ADE, these antibody-dependent exacerbations, that I hope don't happen, but hope is something a little bit different after the fact when you've already injected it into millions of people around the globe. So how does it work? So it will activate CD4 and CD8 cells. These are immune stimulatory cells. Some go extracellularly out of the cell and create antibodies. So there is some antibody production here. So that was in the definition of vaccine. You can see that, okay, these do function that way in the definition of a vaccine. 30 milligram dose given twice by day 22, a slight antibody response. That's why you're needing the second dose around day 22, and second dose, verifiable antibody responses have been seen. The T cells, though, is really where it is at. 8 out of 10 people had specific T cells specific to the virus, so that would make the infection less harsh if you get COVID or when you get COVID in the future. So here are the list of ingredients. Now, in the Pfizer one, a lot of folks had concerns around mercury. There is no mercury in this vaccine. There is PEG, and PEG is this, so you got 30 micrograms of nucleoside modified messenger RNA. That's the coding to create the spike protein in. It's a little program that gets inserted, goes through the cell wall into the cytoplasm to manufacture the spike protein. There were some concerns around, is this changing our DNA? The DNA is actually in the nucleus of the cell. There's no evidence of this going in to the nucleus of the cell. Again, time will tell. I don't know. I cannot say with certainty that it will not. Now, I have seen others say with certainty that it will not, just based on the physiology there, but they don't take into consideration the health of the individual that this injection is going into. So there is some concern there, but currently, if we just go on messenger RNA technology, it goes into the cytoplasm, no interaction with the DNA. That doesn't really speak to any reverse transcription or transcription issues in the person. Again, so I am not going to say confidently that it won't, but there is no evidence to support that it will right now. There are these lipids, this polyethylene glycol, that's the PEG. That's what most people are having the allergic response to. It's also a known cancer-causing agent. They use that as an adjuvant to stimulate the immune system response to get some action and activity to actually get this to imprint in the body. And then here's the listing of the other ingredients for you. The Moderna messenger RNA is very similar in fashion, similar in ingredient list. You can look that one up yourself at 100 microgram dose. It's a good antibody response. They were even showing at 25 milligrams, or sorry, 25 micrograms. There's a good response there as well. Now they've gone with the higher dose in the vaccines, but at both levels, you are getting immune system response, which is a good thing. And then Johnson & Johnson is the new kid on the block. They've been in research. It just got okayed for emergency use administration in the United States. This is a different technology, a little bit more similar to what we've been used to seeing, or when you say vaccine. They use an adenovirus vector vaccine. So they actually put the SARS-CoV-2 RNA for making spike proteins into an adenovirus, which is the common cold. Then they put that into the body, and that's what allows this to enter the cell. So the common cold, the virus is taken up into macrophages. So that's our immune system, swallows them up, and then it's kind of the Trojan horse, which allows this into the body. Hypothetically, it can go to other cells in the body. Production into CD86 spike and adenovirus proteins produced. T cells produced are CD4, CD8, and that goes into interferon 8. Only one shot needed of the Johnson & Johnson. The adjuvants. So what are these? The other substances in the vaccine. So there is a matrix M1 adjuvant. There's no live virus in any of these vaccines. What is the M1 matrix adjuvant? So it's a saponin, it's a lipid, it's fat from the Chilean soap box tree. It's never been in children's vaccines because it drives the Th1 response. So remember back at the beginning slides of Th1 to Th2. Only in adults so far. So none of this has been in the US market before these injections. It has been used in vaccines in countries with low economic resources for Ebola and Zika virus. So it has been in vaccines, this M1 matrix adjuvant, never in vaccines in the United States before. So what's in the vaccine? So again, a little rundown. The PFIZER has the messenger RNA, the lipids as an adjuvant. One of the ingredients, the PEG, some have very strong immune responses, so that's where the allergies are coming from. 3 additional lipids in the PFIZER vaccine. Moderna has the messenger RNA, has PEG in it as well as a list of other adjuvants. The J&J, it has a live viral vector, the adenovirus, not coronavirus, but the adenovirus, common cold. It does not have adjuvants, adenovirus and the SARS-CoV-2 spike sequence. So, if you're concerned on some of the allergic reactions, it might be good to wait for the Johnson & Johnson so that you don't have all of the other ingredients in the vaccine. But currently, I know widespread in the United States, we've got the PFIZER and Moderna going. I think Johnson & Johnson is now coming on the scene for folks. Safety and consideration. So 2.5 people per million are having an allergic response. Small percentage of people currently experiencing anaphylaxis. Most likely, again, it is the PEG ingredient as an adjuvant in there. Side effects of the second dose. So headaches, that's basically from interferon alpha, fatigue from interleukin 1, and muscle aches from interleukin 6. These are immunological responses. We would expect this to occur, and it's also a good response. It means your immune system is accepting this in and creating the desired effect. So, those side effects, that was kind of the big worry at the beginning. Oh, these side effects, and oh, well, look, they're, headaches, fatigue, and muscle aches, and we would anticipate those to occur. But what doesn't get discussed on that is the autoimmune conditions and neurodegeneration, and even some of the exacerbations from getting this. I will talk to you about this, a safe way of getting the vaccine if you are choosing to do that for yourself. Autoimmunity. So I had some questions come in. Are the mRNA vaccines safe for people with autoimmunity? Do the messenger RNA vaccines cause autoimmunity? And we don't know. It can take 3 to 18 years to develop autoimmunity. There is a mechanism of action here that is getting looked at. It's called the bystander effect, interferon gamma. And there's also molecular mimicry, how this can occur, which means it's a similar sequence on those messenger RNAs coming in to deliver the spike protein instructions that look like our own amino acid sequences. So it looks like ourself. And so the body starts attacking itself. Again, theoretical, but is it a possibility? It certainly is a possibility. I would be very cautious if you have an autoimmune condition. I know it says in the paperwork, of the 8 pages of paperwork that people are not reading, it does give serious caution to this. I know that's not what's coming out across the news waves right now, but I would be cautious around that. A paper looking at COVID-19 and autoimmunity. So we can look at the disease process to see, well, maybe will we have that type of reaction with the immunization and or the vaccine. So looking for molecular mimicry, as long as your cells are intact, you won't attack the mitochondria. So mitochondrial antigen 42% of the time. So how do you know if your cells are intact? Well, you don't. Not in this day and age. If you are looking at it, if you're going to some integrative functional medicine practitioners, maybe you've gotten that workup to determine kind of the cellular health and your terrain abilities to accept this pathogenic program into the system. Neurofilament protein, so some reactivity there, so 56% reactivity. Now, this is in particular, this is with COVID, so this is with SARS-CoV-2 actually in the wild. So this is the research paper. I included it on here for your indulgement and enjoyment. Insulin receptors, so there is some diabetes coming secondary to infections with COVID. So, COVID is not just like you get it and you get over it. Now, for a great portion of the population, it is, but for some with predispositions and what we're calling the long haulers or post-COVID syndrome, we are seeing some really big repercussions and negative effects of getting this virus. So there is potential for autoimmunity to occur. It takes 3 to 18 years for this to show. So we got to wait, but that's part of the study that is occurring. Currently, we wish that we had the data in maybe some animal studies, maybe some small cohorts of people, but this one has been rushed to market and we don't know. Causing infertility, this was another big concern. So do the mRNA vaccines cause infertility by stimulating production of antibodies that bind to the placenta? The theory is interesting. There have been 44,000 women that have had COVID and successful pregnancies. So in particular, COVID may cause some infertility itself, but women are giving birth to healthy babies. The shared sequence is very short, so the likelihood of cross-reactivity is small. Again, we have no long-term studies on the vaccine to know. There are some markers in the adjuvants that do mimic the placenta, and I think that's where the concern is coming up there. Again, too early to tell. I wish I had better, more definitive information, but time will tell on that one. So we don't know. And again, the authorities or officials saying that it does not cause infertility are blatantly lying, because we don't have the research on that. So we don't know is the honest answer. And I told you I would stand for the and there it is. We don't know. How long will immunity last? So there is a T cell response, and we see that with folks that have recovered from COVID. They haven't developed antibodies, but they have T cell memory. So if we look at that T cell response compared to the meningococcal vaccine, you can get a sense as to, well, how long may immunity last? So the meningococcal vaccine lasts about 10 to 18 years of immunity, unless, and here's a big unless the virus mutates, which we're already seeing with the variants. I mean, viruses mutate. That's their job. Their job is to stay alive for as long as possible. So with entirely new peptides, we'll need different vaccines, similar to what's happening with the flu vaccine. You know, every year it's a new guess as to what's coming down the pike. I don't see that happening with this one. I think there's been a lot of money on the line to produce these vaccines that we've got. That's why you hear, you know, you still have to wear your mask, you still have to social distance. Just because you got the vaccine really doesn't change a lot. It may change your mindset, but as I said earlier, it doesn't change your immune system response. I mean, it might make it less harsh if and when you get COVID, but it does not produce immunity. So natural immunity versus vaccine induced, like how long will they last? We don't know. It's too soon. We're still within the 1 year mark. Antibody testing, some people aren't making antibodies. But if you did get COVID and you do test for antibodies, which I will recommend if you are considering getting the vaccine, just to make sure that you won't have an exacerbation, like a big exacerbation, like cardiovascular event or death, along those lines. So we'll talk about that. Should I get it if I'm pregnant? It was never tested in pregnant women. Some nurses on the front lines did get it and they are pregnant. They're part of the research study then, I guess. There is a Th2-like state in pregnancy. So the Th2-like state in pregnancy, strong Th1 in pregnancy can develop pre-eclampsia. So these vaccines tend to push the immune system towards the Th1, and you can develop a pre-eclampsia, which is a serious complication in birth, or in pregnancy rather. Let me correct my language there. Nursing, totally safe. Theoretically, messenger RNA goes into the macrophage, into your lymph nodes. Then the messenger RNA is gone. It's dead. And then all you have is the immune system response. So basically, the messenger RNA comes in, gives the program, your body makes the spike protein, the messenger RNA goes away. My recommendation in pregnancy would be not to get it. I would really wait to see what the data shows us long-term here. What if I had COVID? Should I get the vaccine? So very interesting question. I included this write-up by Human Norchasm. I may have just butchered your name, doctor, but thank you for your writing and your concern. I put your link there too. And this makes inherent sense to me. If a person with a recent or active COVID-19 infection is vaccinated, the highly effective and antigenic specific immune response incited by the vaccine will very likely attack the inner lining of the blood vessel and cause damage, leading to blood clot formation. This could result in major serious problems like strokes and heart attacks, at least in some people. I project that this risk will be highest in the elderly, the infirm, and those with cardiovascular disease. Now, This is a theory, folks. This is a compelling theory, and one that I think we should pay attention until we know the information, until we get the statistics back. This is just prudent. It's like caution. I have cautious optimism, but the first tenet of medicine is do no harm. And to be renegade and not even consider any of this, again, I feel is criminal. Caution for previous or active asymptomatic COVID. So the real safety concern we're addressing here is that vaccinating individuals who might already have viral antigens in their bodies at the time they get vaccinated might trigger a dangerous inflammatory reaction in the tissues where the antigen is localized. So in the case of the elderly, the infirm, or those with significant cardiovascular disease, such vaccine-incited inflammatory reactions could prove deadly. And we are seeing some evidence of this come out of Israel. So they have over half of their population now vaccinated. But what is coming out of Israel is they're saying, you know, if they're too old or weak, immune compromised, this may not be the route to go to provide the safety that we're looking for, because it's really within the first 48 hours of the deaths that I reported on from the VAERS, majority of those are happening in the first 48 hours. But we see a lessening of lymphocytic activity, which is your immune system's ability to fight viruses, decreases for a week or two after getting the injection. So it's really important to be very safe in between your inoculations if you choose to get the vaccine. And what our recommendation, I'm going to really, I like what this doctor wrote up. So I'm going to share with the testing. So if getting the vaccines, you test, don't guess. So who are the individuals who are almost certain to be carrying SARS-CoV antigens in their tissues? They're the recently convalescent COVID-19 patients and those with active symptomatic or asymptomatic infections. In order to ensure you're maximally safe when receiving your COVID-19 vaccine, you should determine if you fall into one of these categories. And so you should test with a PCR test, the one that takes 72 hours, or the immediate test, or the antibody test, or some combination of the two. Two of those three tests would be my recommendation. If you are going to get the vaccine, you want to know, do you have any active, are you asymptomatic now? We are seeing those folks that have the SARS-CoV-2 antigen in their body have more negative consequences from the vaccine. Are you a long hauler? So if you are a COVID-19 long hauler, or basically the post-COVID person with symptoms persisting over 2 months, you ought to consider delaying your vaccine until you get a resolution of the symptoms. So because the long hauler syndrome is highly likely to be the result of an ongoing inflammatory reaction in your body, I'd say it's not wise to get the vaccine if you're still pretty much laid up from the virus. So my suggestion would be to wait 6 to 8 months minimally before even considering. That way we also have more information as to exactly what is going on with the vaccines in the population and possible long-term repercussions of them. If you've taken the vaccine already, what do? Well, one, you're still going to have to address underlying issues. I would highly recommend getting your vitamin D level checked. And ideally, you want your vitamin D level between 50 and 80 nanograms per deciliter to prevent any occurrence of the antibody-dependent exacerbations. To explain what those are again, the antibody-dependent exacerbations, this was what occurred in the animal studies using messenger RNA. And in great portions of studies, all of the animals died as a result of that. There were some monkey studies, all of the monkeys died because of ADE. And that happened anywhere from 2 to 7 months after the vaccine reaction. Well, what caused that? Basically, your immune system is primed, as it should be, with the spike protein, but then you get the virus and your immune system overreacts. It's very similar to how COVID is actually so deadly now to people, which is it's not the virus per se, it's our body's response to the virus. And so that is really what we want to mitigate and modulate. So having an adequate vitamin D level, and actually more than adequate, I would call this ideal level, will really help put the odds in your favor of no negative consequences if you get exposed to the virus in the future after your vaccine. Need to take care of underlying conditions now more than ever. And you'll see one of the slides at the end here of the top 4 things that we can do to help really reduce your risk of any serious effects of COVID. Obesity, we know folks that have obesity are harder hit, bigger issues with complications and death. And so this one, we want to take it seriously. You know, I'm a firm believer in practicing health at any size. And the data is really strong suggesting that folks with obesity, which is a greater portion of the American population, are at higher risk. And it's exactly what we've been seeing. You know, unfortunately, no one's been able to take this one head on. And we've been talking about it here in our clinic around, you know, perhaps the American population just has a weaker immune system as to why our death rate is so high. It's because we have a diseased, sick population out there. And when you look at the data, boy, it really does ring true. So, you know, now more than ever, addressing your underlying health issues is really important. Option for everyone. So are you interested to reduce your risk of severe COVID by 63.5%? So based on nationally representative data on demographics and cardiometabolic conditions, stratified and national data on COVID-19 hospitalizations, multivariable adjusted estimates of associations of cardiometabolic conditions, our comparative risk assessment model estimated that nearly 2 in 3, 63.5% of COVID-19 hospitalizations among US adults are attributable to the following 4 cardiometabolic conditions: total obesity, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, and heart failure. So those 4 account for 63.5% of hospitalizations. So this, if you've got any of these 4, definitely get in touch and let's talk about what it is you can do. There are really adept providers, and I tip my hat to Dr. Dan Chong for bringing this to light. He is specializing in cardiology and these cardiometabolic conditions, and it's an eye-opener, right? I mean, again, we've had 12 months of propaganda to educate us around what can we do to limit our risk. And really nobody was talking about how to correct and heal from these issues. So it is possible. There is the journal link for you. And just in closing, you know, your terrain matters. Get your vitamin D measured, ideally between 50 and 80 nanograms per deciliter. Address your health issues. The same old isn't cutting it anymore. You know, it now more than ever, you owe it to yourself, you know, you owe it to your loved ones, you owe it to your family, your community, is we've got to start addressing root underlying causes of illness. This is a big thing. This virus should not be wiping out our population. It's because we are not healthy. This is the wake-up call, and I hope that we can listen to it and get our acts together. All right. So in closing, you can find me at naturecuresclinic.com. Again, Dr. Greg Eckel, naturopathic physician, licensed acupuncturist. I've been in clinical practice for 20 years, 21 years actually this year. I stand for medical freedom, freedom of choice, for safe and effective vaccinations, to thriving and not just surviving. I hope you liked the presentation. Tried to keep it as down close to an hour as possible. I think I did it. Boy, there's so many directions you can go with this topic. The data just keeps pouring in. So stay tuned maybe for updates. If you got future questions, get them to me. Subscribe in on my YouTube channel. I'll be posting some stuff up there if I'm still allowed to be on YouTube after this. I'm hoping that you're leaving with a sense of curiosity, definitely more informed decision making, and some preventative measures that you can take to really get the best response from the vaccine if you so choose to get that as well. All right, take care, everybody. Much love. Bye.